Welcome to the Talent Current by Root Edge, a podcast about what's happening in talent right now, with a special focus on the people powering the energy and infrastructure transition. I'm your host, Mindy Prefling. I've spent nearly a decade in recruitment, helping some of the most influential companies in renewable energy, power, and digital infrastructure build the teams that drive their growth. Over the years, I've led high-performing recruitment teams, partnered with some of the industry's largest players, and launched and hosted the Soapbox series, a podcast where I spoke with leaders across energy and infrastructure about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, with the Talent Current, I'm evolving those conversations forward. Each episode, we dive into honest discussions with industry leaders about hiring, leadership, culture, and what it takes to stay grounded in a constantly shifting landscape. We'll explore everything from executive search and organizational strategy to leadership coaching and the changing workplace landscape. And we'll shine a light on the women breaking ground in traditionally male-dominated spaces. At Root Edge, our mission is simple: connecting people to energize tomorrow. And this podcast is an extension of that mission. Whether you're scaling a company or building your own career, the Talent Current is your place to stay plugged into how work is changing and who's driving it forward. Welcome back to the Talent Current. We have a special edition mini-series that we are kicking off today. I'm your host, Mindy Prefling, Managing Partner at Root Edge Energy and Infrastructure Recruitment. And joining me in this special series is my friend and industry partner, Meghan Craig, founder of the Regenerative Edge and leadership advisor. Thank you, Meghan, for being here with me again today.
Oh, it is my absolute pleasure to be joining you in this conversation today, Mindy.
Yeah. This is such an apropos conversation for you and I because of our positions in our respective industries and in renewable energy where our Venn diagram coincides together. So what we're going to high level talk about today is something that is on or should be on everyone's minds, and that is our own professional development. And what led us to this conversation is a couple of things. Meghan and I co-hosted a workshop at the Rise Leadership Forum in the fall of 2025, where we learned a lot about women in particular, their leadership challenges in the industry, and as well as our salary and sentiment survey that we collaborated with Rise on in 2025, which opened up the conversation that many people have ambition to move into more leadership roles, but lack the framework to get there. So let me pause for a moment because I would love to pass the mic over to Meghan for a little bit more of an introduction, and then we can dive into that together.
Amazing. Thank you, Mindy. And I think you really touched on something important about this isn't necessarily, we're speaking to women leaders, but we're not necessarily speaking only to women leaders. And we're really, what we found while we were together at the Rise Leadership Forum, we had an opportunity to work with executive women or senior women. And so women in that 15, 20, 25-year experience in their career, and there is something happening there. And I'll share, I'm here in this conversation and I joined that conversation at Rise because of the work I do with women leaders who are around that point in their career, and women leaders who are working in climate, sustainability, and social impact. And I've noticed this big trend that once you hit that, you've had success in your career. So many women have had success in their career and they hit a point where something shifts. Something shifts and they want something different, not necessarily a new job or a new industry, but they want to lead in a different way. And I think where you and I kind of ended up here today and why this conversation is happening, not only because of the really kind of incredible data that the survey that you all at Root Edge put together with Rise and what we're seeing in the industry with more data to back it up, but also like those trends I think that you and I are experiencing in our just day-to-day work with women leaders, that there is space for more conversation around what does professional development look like? What does leadership development look like? what is the future of our careers for women who have been successful? What does that look like? And I do think a big trend that we're seeing is it's shifting. What once worked for us in our professional development, what we looked to and what we used to look to, is it's shifting and changing as it rightfully should. But this is an awkward moment for
Mm,
us. Well, where do we, women are asking, where do I go? What do I do? How do I grow? Where do I find some belonging? So I'll just share, as you asked me to introduce more of myself, I'm feeling more and more passionate about this because I'm seeing this question come up for women, and it's keeping some of us really stuck in
mm.
where we are. So uh, I'm so excited to be here just to open up this conversation and hear from not just you and what you're seeing and what the data is telling us, but also to hear from more women who are listening in.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for that. So I want to lean into that data component first, and then we can unpack that together given our respective positions in the industry and that we speak to people every single day about challenges just like this. So what we found in our salary report was that 71% of our respondents, and like you said, this is not exclusive to women, this is of all respondents, see that there is a path for promotion and leadership and advancement in their careers, but 77% of people lack the framework in place to get them to that next stage in their career. And I want to add one more data point to this, that 26% of our respondents said that they would consider a career move or even a move out of the industry because they lack the framework in place to know where they are going in their career. And I think this is a really salient point for a couple of reasons. One, people see progression. So it's not that they don't see the opportunity, but the reason that they would consider leaving is because they lack that framework in place to get them to that next stage. So people want support, people want structure, and they want to know how they're going to get to where they're going.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to touch on a few other things that we're seeing in kind of that data where more more research organizations are paying attention to this. So
Mm,
Deloitte has been running this Women at Work study for a handful of years now. And just recently, kind of the themes that I'm seeing from that is nearly half women leaders are saying that their stress is higher than the previous year and they're concerned about their mental health. And if we're worried about stress and our mental health, we're not growing as leaders and we're not
mm,
growing in our deep expertise, right? That is incredibly distracting, and there's so many things contributing to that right now. And we're also seeing senior women especially burning out, considering leaving the workforce, or like you said, what your survey found was they're willing to leave to find some more certainty somewhere. And I think we're in this place of deep uncertainty, right? Everything is shifting and changing around us. And so, where I'd love to take this conversation is around what are our goals of professional development?
mm,
And is it searching for certainty? Or could it possibly be something like I'm looking for more clarity on what I want?
mm,
And that starts to shift a little bit around looking to others or our employer, for example, for that framework that you were articulating, Mindy, is like, what if, what if we reframed this while we are surrounded by deep uncertainty of what the industry is happening, what is happening in the climate space and policy, and because there is so much uncertainty around this, where can we start to build some more clarity for ourselves?
yeah, I have a couple different thoughts when I am listening to what you're saying because I think so many people can relate to what we're talking about here. Obviously, our data is showing that, but anecdotally, I know that this is very close to home for so many people as a recruiter. When I speak to individuals on a daily basis, typically their reasons for wanting to consider a career move include something to the effect of their next position, their next promotion, and their opportunity for growth or having the infrastructure around them to move them into that next position. So maybe to bring it back to us as individuals, because data can be really overwhelming sometimes, I've learned. Maybe what we can do is pull it back a little bit to what we are witnessing or maybe what our own experiences are. Because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about my own burnout in my last position where I really felt a lack of infrastructure and a lack of resources for my own professional development. Yet, as a middle manager and as a leader in the organization, I was tasked with developing junior and even manager level individuals as a part of my responsibility. So it felt a little, gosh, I don't know what the word is, hypocritical maybe,
Mm,
of my business to expect me to develop individuals, but yet I didn't feel like I had the same investment in me to develop me.
hmm. Yeah. I'm really glad you shared that because I had a similar experience. And I think traditionally, from my experience, and it sounds like from yours, professional development has really been focused on our technical skills, right?
Mm,
Skill building, certifications. And while those are important, I think what this data is starting to show, and I think the narrative that I'm starting to see is something there's there's a maturing almost of what professional development is.
mhm,
And there's a point in our career, and while it might happen more in that 10, 15, 20-year, 25-year mark, it can happen early on too of like, what kind of leader do I want to be? Right. And I think culturally, it's kind of, we've been conditioned to always, okay, professional development means I need another certification. It means I need to look outside of myself to go learn this new skill, get this, um, these acronyms, after my name. And while that is helpful, there is something that we're really missing when we're talking about that professional development piece, especially when it comes to our employer. And it's something that I could see why there is a gap because it can be really personal,
mhm,
right? That personal component of it, of looking inward, which is harder. And that feels sometimes it feels a little vulnerable, but when we hit that point in our leadership, and we being women leaders but just leaders in general, when we're not getting the support we need, or we're being told no, for in your example, and like I shared, I had a similar one. Women especially internalize that no,
mm,
I'm not okay, that means I'm not supposed to get this. It means that they aren't going to put money behind me. That means that I just need to get another certification. And we forget about this whole other side of what professional and leadership development can really mean, is how do I want to grow as a leader?
mm,
It's taking that responsibility back on ourselves and really stepping into what self leadership,
mhm,
and leading ourselves to that next place of what our career is. So that kind of ties back to a point I was making earlier about us being responsible for the clarity in who we are, how we want to lead, understanding when we hit a point in our career when we want to grow differently, and we don't want to grow technically. We want to
mhm,
grow ourselves in who we are being as a leader when we show up. And I think
mhm,
that is an opportunity for real expansion. And there aren't a lot of spaces right now, or obvious spaces, for women to go to get that kind of support. They do exist, but sometimes they're a little harder to find. And so
mhm.
I think that's another part of our conversation today is we want to start to open up what some of those spaces kind of thematically could look like, and maybe even start to pull who has been in those spaces. What are you seeing?
Yeah, that's such an important point that I want to highlight is that oftentimes in these professional development conversations, we err on the side of professional and technical because that's what's comfortable and safe.
Yes.
And where things are a little bit softer and more personal, as you said, around interpersonal skills, leadership skills, management skills, coaching skills, mentorship, etc., it it's a little bit touchier for
Mhm.
us, and dare I say feminine, because this is a
Mm.
little bit more of a feminine leadership skill. I think you're the one that taught me that. Was that the right phrase? Feminine
Yeah,
leadership?
yeah, or
Yeah.
feminine strategy, but I think how whatever feels good to you,
Mhm.
is we have to make these things our own,
Mhm.
right? If I share a framework that doesn't quite resonate, and all you need to do is tweak the language that you're using to make it feel good, that is where growth happens, right?
Mhm.
That is where you as an individual take something that you're experiencing or learning and kind of bring in as your own. And I think that is really where that growth or professional development or leadership development, personal development, that's where it really starts to happen when we can
Mhm.
make these things our own because we are all unique in our leadership. And sometimes we get stuck on trying to lead like someone else, or all the
Mhm.
examples that we've seen that have come before us, even people we admire.
Mhm.
But remember, we are not them.
Mhm.
And so I love that you asked that question because you're sharing what really resonates with you.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
the more it does with you, you can bring that in for yourself. You can share that with others. And I think that is really where growth happens.
Mhm. So I wanna lean into something else that you said because it's an important highlight in this conversation because it helps to inform where do we go from here, and
Yeah.
that is this concept of self-leadership. So you and I have talked a bit about this idea and about this challenge that leaders have in their professional development in this conversation, but I
Mm,
want to zoom in a little bit more on that and what we mean by self-leadership, because we expect
yeah.
our companies to come to us with a plan. And there is some logic there. I do think our companies, our corporations, our managers should have a desire to invest in us as individuals because it will benefit them as a manager and it will benefit the business. But if they don't, what is self-leadership and what can we do about it for ourselves?
Oof. Yes, Mindy. Um, I I think that is really important, and I'll add an and. Even when the organization is bringing a framework, some structure for you to participate in a professional development, there is such an opportunity for us to be sure we are developing as we want to alongside that investment with our organization, and also in service to ourselves and to what
Mhm.
we want as in our career, to what the impact that we want to make, right? We work, both of us have worked in the renewable energy industry, and that is an industry that is full of incredible passion. People
Mhm.
who want to make a difference in this world, who want to be part of a solution. And I think that is the passion we want to tap into as individuals and leaders and team members. How do I grow that? How do I keep growing that passion so I can keep, you might call it living my purpose or having my impact or being part of that solution? How do we deepen that? And I think, then the question is, well, what do those structures looks like outside of skill building, certification programs? And you and I have talked about a few, and it's been really fun to just start to brainstorm. So I think maybe we start with just a few ideas, and
Mhm.
we'd love to hear from the audience, right? Of mentorship.
Mhm.
Well, I've had great examples of mentors who ask me a lot of questions about what it is that I want, where I want to go, help mirror back things that I don't necessarily see in myself. And I've also had examples of mentors that want me to do it their way only.
Mhm.
And that, in my opinion, is not what a good mentor is, right? They're there to help kind of guide you along and to help mirror back to your strengths, different opportunities, perspectives you're not seeing, or experiences you haven't had. I don't know. What about you with mentorship? Is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. I think the reality is if you look at a list of what resources can you turn to help with your professional development, there's nothing unfamiliar on that list to anyone. Everybody has heard of the concept of a mentor before, and I say that not because you're not saying something that lacks creativity, but rather that it means something to you because you have sought a mentor and you have felt the impact that a mentor has had on your life. And I think before you can get to that level, or that rather that stage of this is what I'm going to do next, I'm going to get a mentor, or I'm going to seek some third party coach or advisor, or whatever the case may be, we have to go back to that question you asked. And it's so straightforward and direct and somewhat simple, but very hard to answer. And that is, what do you want?
Yes.
That is where we have to start before you can figure out what you're going to do next, and really explore that, and probably explore it with someone that you trust. And it can be in a work setting, or it can be at home in a personal setting, but this is the most important part before you can decide how you're going to take on your own self leadership and what you're going to do next.
Yes, that is so, so well said. And I don't think we can drive any other points home
Mhm,
after that. So I think we'll leave it there because that question is and can be one of the most difficult ones to answer, especially if we haven't asked that in a
mhm.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wha Okay, then I think this is a really good opportunity to wrap this mini session and talk about the ways that we can help people to empower themselves to start asking themselves that question, and maybe chunk out some of these resources, because that's what we do, right? That's what we're
Yeah.
here for, and this is why we're hosting this series. So I want to first offer from myself that I have recently started a Substack. Obviously, I do a lot of podcasting and short excerpts on LinkedIn, but I've started a Substack to expound a bit more on the topics that I discuss within leadership journeys. We'll use that as an overarching term. So I'd love to invite anyone to follow me on Substack and message me there or on LinkedIn with any questions or ideas that you might have that you would like me to explore.
And we'll do the same because I am offering a masterclass next week, but I will be offering many more because along this theme, I found that it's so important to open the conversation. So we can
Mhm,
learn that we are not alone in these feelings of isolation in at certain points in our career. But not just certain points in our career, but I think also in our life and with all of the uncertainty that is around us, we're not alone. And so we, like Mindy said, we are asking ourselves, what is it that we want? And then start taking some action to move towards that. And they could be small things. So subscribe to Mindy's Substack and just tune into what she's sharing and what she's seeing and the perspective that she wants to bring out into the world. Tune into the masterclass that I'm offering next week and beyond, and also tune into this conversation because we really want to keep it going. Because I know Mindy and I have connected on this a few times now, and we really feel strongly and deeply that this is a really important conversation to not just start, but to open up. So we'd love to hear from you and help us keep the conversation going. What feels hardest in this stage of your journey, your leadership, your life right now?
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I want to just reiterate Meghan as a resource and plug her masterclass. I have attended coaching sessions. Well, I guess Meghan, whether or not either of us have admitted it, has already coached me one on one. And I have been to one of her workshops, is what I was trying to say. And she's fantastic. So, highly recommend her masterclass and reaching out to her directly if that feels more comfortable for you. And yes, just to reiterate what Meghan said, we want to know, what is your biggest leadership challenge? Megan, I don't think you mentioned the name of your masterclass and how to find it. Could you help lead us there? Hopefully, you know more than I know about my Substack.
Let's see what we can do here. It's called The Edge of Change, because I believe that so many of us are on that edge, that growth edge of change. And we'll be talking about different frameworks for leadership. We'll be talking about what I'm seeing and what's happening. We'll be hearing from the group, but you can go to meganbcraig.com and register. And I will also link it to everywhere you're seeing this video as well.
Amazing. Yeah, can't wait to see who shows up for you. And thank you for joining us on the Talent Current. Megan, thank you for being my guest. Again, fantastic as always. I love our conversations. Thank you.
Yes, and I can't wait for the next one.
This is your host, Mindy Prefling, and that's it for this episode of the Talent Current. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed the conversation, please be sure to subscribe and share. I'll be back soon with more insights to keep you connected to how our industry is changing and the people shaping what's next.